Hello. Today is the 29th of April. I was organised today and actually wrote it down. So it's the 29th of April, which makes it day 40 of lockdown. That sounds long, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
That's longer than any holiday I've ever been on or anything like that. 40 days straight.
That's literally how long the world was flooded for in history.
In history, yeah. 40 days.
Did that at school.
Did we at school?
Yes, at school.
At Sunday school?
No, regular school. I think, like, the school that I went to, they would probably call it a faith school now, but at the time it was just a school.
Well, right, okay, so they're allowed to teach that, like, back. Well, I went to it at Malthus Church Junior School.
I don't know if they taught it as fact, but they just used to teach Bible stories, and I remember learning about the Vikings, and I don't really remember anyone ever saying, by the way,
a distinction.
This Bible stuff could be nonsense.
Yeah.
Vikings definitely true. Like, there was never really a distinction drawn, and we did used to have like prayers and hymns and assembly and stuff. So.
Well, we had similar. We sort of had to do prayers and hymns, and once a term we went to the church all as a group.
Well, there you go. You see.
But I don't remember them sort of teaching us about the flood as though it was in our history lesson. I think they did sort of sell it as just Bible study.
I mean, when I was at lower school, I don't even particularly remember there being much distinction about, like, you didn't have a timetable and, like, this is history and now we're doing this. It was just like, I'll get your numbers books out and we'll be doing that. So I don't know if I necessarily knew, oh, this is history and this is RE. Or, do you know what I mean? It was just, like, stuff that we were being fed into our sort of fragile, malleable minds.
Well, it didn't stick, did it?
You say that. But I did bring it up, didn't I? I had that information at my fingertips. 40 days, 40 nights. That's how long the world once flooded for. That's how long we've been in pandemic.
That isn't how long we've been in pandemic. We went into pandemic before we went into lockdown.
That's how long we've been in lockdown.
Yeah.
It can't be a coincidence until tomorrow when it's going to be 41 days and it will have no meaning.
Everything's going to be back to normal tomorrow.
Anyway,
no, it's not.
I'm feeling happy today.
I'm feeling much better today.
Good.
Basically I've kind of stuck with trying to limit my time on looking at bad news. And also doing more time with colouring books and sitting in with Poppet and just trying to be a bit more relaxed about things, and it seems to be kicking in. I feel a lot better. So that's good. We did joke yesterday that we need to start talking about the real world stuff a bit earlier because we keep waffling for 25 minutes and then running out of time to talk about some vaguely serious stuff. So I think let's go in. We'll start with what could be construed as a nice story.
Just before we do that, though,
okay,
we should mention, I was going to say, the reason I'm in a good mood is because I have a Rogan Josh on the hob.
We might do a little bit of camera trickery at times where we have to go stir something, so we'll pause.
If things are a bit disjointed, that's why. But I've got curry to look forward to, which is nice. Harry Hill used to have a line, if he used to have like a heckle put down, where someone shouted something out at him, he'd go, "Oh, you might say that, sir, but when I get home I've got a chicken waiting for me in the oven." And you can't really argue with that. So
we've got a Rogan Josh waiting for us on the hob, which by the time we've faffed about with this might be not far off ready, so that's exciting. So what I was going to say, there is some sort of what could be argued as good news. Personally, I'm not sure if I give a shit, but Boris Johnson his fiancée has had their baby a bit earlier than expected. So that's sort of in the news. I guess the birth of a baby is a nice story, isn't it? Just shame it's Boris's. But this one he's definitely admitting is his, so that's something.
The thing is, I don't want to cast too many aspersions on a newborn baby, but I slightly suspect that Boris Johnson views the Tory leadership almost like a family business.
Yeah.
And that child will be funneled through kind of Eton and Oxford or Cambridge and, the Young Conservatives and eventually... Yeah. And he just thinks...
Yeah, we might as well just call it Kim Jong Johnson.
Yeah, just thinks that is its birthright to be the next... some future Prime Minister, and it's hard to kind of... There are many other babies that are being born for whom I'm much more optimistic.
Yes, that's fair. But one thing I was slightly surprised on is, and I've only just found this out, because I basically heard this story, and it was earlier than we expected, and he was only back in work yesterday, and a little voice at the back of my head was just going, this is yet another reason why Boris is not going to be at work. But I will take that back, because apparently he has said he will delay his paternity leave in the wake of the current crisis. So he is actually going to carry on working. So that's a surprise, because it doesn't seem like it's taken too much for him to just bugger off. Obviously, I'm not saying that he wasn't sick or anything like that, but he also buggered off on holiday when Wales was flooded, missed 5 Cobra meetings. He seemed quite willing to not go to work, so I thought the birth of his baby was going to be a prime opportunity for him to just chirk. But he's actually sticking around theoretically for a bit.
What he's done is he's acting like he's doing the noble thing, but he's just leaving his partner with the tricky bit.
Yeah.
And then
I doubt Boris is a big nappy changer anyway.
He'll probably take his paternity leave when the kid's about 5 or something, and just like take it to a cricket match before it goes off to its first term at
private boarding school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's sort of going on in the news, and that's I guess a nice story, I suppose. But to take that from there to a very not nice story, and if you are, to be honest, if you are still trying to avoid statistics, they're fairly hard to avoid at the moment anyway, but due to them now including care home deaths in the daily death toll, today's death figure has shot up, because they're now including, so it hasn't been that there's been in the last 24 hours thousands of deaths, but they're now counting ones that have happened over the last week or so. But it does mean that today our death toll has gone up to 26,097 confirmed COVID deaths in hospitals, and now some of those are also including care homes. That is not including all care homes or deaths in the community, or, and this is pertinent, suspected COVID deaths. This is only including people who have been tested and confirmed to have COVID. And as we know, they haven't been testing people except in hospitals and now somewhat in care homes. So the true figure is probably still much more in the Financial Times estimate of in the 40,000 plus range. But the official figure today has spiked up to 26,000, which is a big leap. And is a daunting number to look at. So there's also been some confusing stuff going on with the statistics that I've noticed. Today I was trying to make sense of the figures, and they've admitted that it is a bit confusing and it's hard to compare to other countries, because everybody sort of takes their statistics from slightly different sources and in slightly different manners. So you can't really do a direct case-by-case comparison between countries. You can just do a rough guideline. And even the sort of statisticians and epidemiologists are all kind of saying the same thing. There's a certain amount of guesswork goes into it. But I was trying to sort of just look at the figures and look at the daily death rates and see where we're actually at compared to how we have been. And I'm a bit confused. In this story, which was BBC News, I saw this on, where they announced the jump to 26,097, but explained that it wasn't that there had been a sudden surge, it was that they were now factoring in additional stats. They also, in the same article, mentioned in the last 24 hours there have been 765. Didn't actually say COVID deaths, but because it was an article on COVID, I assumed that's what they were talking about. That is a little bit daunting, because over the last week or so, we've been going sort of 500, 400, 300, 400. 765 is quite high again. And we did have that bank holiday weekend a couple of weeks back, and I don't know if that's causing a blip. Also, about, I think it was 8 days ago, Matt Hancock said in that day's daily press briefing, sorry, I haven't checked what date that was, but it was 8 days ago from today, he said that we believe we are at the peak. So they basically mean they didn't think it was going to continue to increase. It would probably flatten out for a while before going down. Today, in the press briefing, which was chaired by Dominic Raab, is it Raab or Rab?
Raab, I think.
He didn't sort of get too specific, because they don't, but he just said, we're not past the peak. So, I don't know where we're considered to be in terms of the peak. How long does the peak last before you start to see decline? Very much there are people talking about when do we release lockdown measures, and the government are being rightfully, I think, very cautious to say any kind of strategy or plan on that. And they've basically also mentioned that they don't even really want to be discussing releasing lockdown in the daily press briefings, because in other countries, admittedly other countries with better figures than us, when they started talking about releasing lockdown measures, they noticed a side effect was people started to actually, even though lockdown wasn't already lifted, people started to be a bit more relaxed
in their
and then
attitudes.
it would cause a spike that shouldn't be there yet. So it's, and
Well,
obviously with
that's-
the delay involved in the incubation period with COVID, you don't want to sort of be saying anything that means people relax now and then they realise, oh crap, we weren't even at full peak yet.
I'm a curmudgeon, so I don't really want to see people. But I realise that a lot of people are kind of missing the pub and socialising and seeing their friends and loved ones. And if that is you, then, it's understandable. People are getting a bit fed up with lockdown and getting a bit bored and wanting to kind of be able to go out and do things. But the last thing we want is for people to all go out and then
it causes a second peak.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, the fact of the matter is, the vast majority of the British population still haven't had COVID. So if everybody just goes out again, then instantly, loads of people are going to catch it, and it's going to go up again. There was talk of using what they called a reverse traffic light system to lockdown. So when they've said they're not going to consider lockdown measures until, I think there's 7 certain, I don't have the exactly what they are, but 7 certain criteria have been met. They're things like death rates are consistently going down for a certain period, that hospitals have a comfortable capacity of a certain percentage, so that if it does then release, they've still got wiggle room before it sort of puts too much pressure on the NHS, things like that. They're not even going to consider releasing the lockdown measures in any way until those criteria are met. When they do start looking into releasing lockdown, it will be in several stages. They haven't said exactly what they are, because as I said, they're not wanting to sort of discuss that in any real depth until we're at that point. But they've sort of been hypothesized to be along the lines of non-essential shops are allowed to open, but still with strict social distancing measures, similar to what we've got in sort of food and grocery shops and pharmacies and things like that at the moment. That non-essential businesses may be able to open. But yeah, basically, the certain things that it's still going to be, mass gatherings aren't going to be allowed, but they might allow certain gatherings. They might allow intermingling of households up to a certain number of people, things like that. So that perhaps you can visit your grandmother, perhaps you can see your friends, but you're not going to be able to all go to the pub and have an ease up, that kind of thing. So there's 3 stages of that. I certainly think my business will be in the green phase of when that's allowed to reopen, because it's a leisure activity where people gather. Now, admittedly, I might get away with that because we can control the number of people on site. We can keep it quite low. We can only have 1 game at a time, and that would be a maximum of 7 players, and 7 players plus staff. Maximum you can have on site is 8 people.
That's true.
That's pretty good. I will pause. Sorry, yes, that was one of those pauses we were talking about. Ooh. A clothes horse just fell over. I think that was a cat. So good for that.
Cats.
So yes. So although my business may be that actually logically we could keep the number of people mingling on site down, and we could decontaminate between games, the fact of the matter is I doubt they'll do it on a case by case, business by business thing. It'll probably be, are you a leisure business? Then you have to close, because that's how it was when they closed us originally. It was all leisure, so all pubs, restaurants, bars, gyms, etc., we were included in that. So it could be a very long time before I'm allowed to go back to work. If that's the case, that's cool, I'll deal with it. It is interesting to sort of go, well, if that's the case, how long are they going to foot the bill for 80% of people's salaries? So again, we're back to the old chestnut of this kind of big bubble of uncertainty over everything. And I think that's really why people are talking so much about releasing lockdown. I don't think it's necessarily that people are all just, well, I think people are fed up, but I don't think it's just that people are, you know, getting restless and fed. I think it's that people are really crying out to know the plan, to have
Where they're
some
gonna stand
semblance of
financially,
certainty, so they can make plans, so that they can think, okay, well, if I'm likely to be back in work in 6 weeks, then I can do X, Y, and Z. So it isn't necessarily just people who are asking about it just because of the sort of emotional and social side of things. I think quite a lot of it might be people needing to have some sense of certainty, plans for the future, plans for their finances,
and for example,
as well as the sort of, I want to see my grandparents, or I want to see my grandchildren, or all of that sort of stuff as well.
just as a for example, there could be people who are furloughed at the minute, and maybe their businesses that they work for are operating and running, but they're on a reduced kind of staff, and they've furloughed a bunch
Like
of
yours,
people,
for example.
like mine. And what happens if in 3 months the government say, that's it, we're not going to pay for any more furloughing? Are the companies going to have to lay people off?
Or you're going to have a big clamour to like compete for who gets
Yeah.
to come back.
Or will they say, well, look, we can't justify you staying off work, we don't want to fire you, but we'll...
Now everybody's
we
going
want
to
you
have to
to
go
come
part-time
in,
and that
we
kind
want you
of
to
thing.
come in and we'll find busy work for you to do, but it's going to make social distancing very difficult and force more people to kind of come in and commute and go back to jobs when it's arguable as to how necessary they are. But, you know, if it's your livelihood,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Say no?
It's tricky. Well, yeah, it is tricky because that's ultimately what this all boils down to, is any decisions that are made up to a certain point. The decision to go into lockdown was a decision to save lives, so that we didn't all catch it all at the same time. The NHS wasn't overwhelmed, and we avoided too many unnecessary deaths. The trouble is, if you release lockdown at any point, because the vast majority of the British population haven't had COVID, you will then get transmissions that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So it's playing off, well, the phrase that I think was in the article I was reading earlier today, it's playing off the price of lives against livelihoods. There will be additional sicknesses, there will be additional deaths whenever they release lockdown, and that will be true until there's a vaccine, if they can find one, until there's a cure. But eventually the economy will not be able to cope with a permanent lockdown. So how long do you wait for a vaccine, or how much do you release it and accept the price of those additional illnesses and additional deaths? The money will run out eventually, and that will ultimately end up being a political decision based on both science and the economy. And that's not a decision I envy anyone making. Whichever government, whoever it was, whatever was at the helm, that is not a decision that I would envy anyone making. Interestingly, today, I read this in a Guardian article. They have finally said that they've reached out and called out to various universities and scientific establishments around the country, calling for additional expertise to join the SAGE panel. Now, the SAGE panel is sort of the scientific advisory panel that have been helping guide decision making on this process. They keep the number of people on those panels and who exactly is on those panels secret until a crisis has passed, usually, so that nobody can be unduly influenced in any way. But certain members of those boards were leaked a few weeks back and came into some criticism that there weren't enough people who were experts in this sort of field. They didn't have any epidemiologists, they didn't have any social scientists. There was a lot of gaps in the expertise, which at the time they kind of poo-pooed and have said all the way along, every stage, a little bit of a platitude. We have always been following the science on this. But you haven't got experts from certain very important scientific fields advising you on the science. And globally, the science has been saying and the science does. There will be different opinions on what the best approach is based on what your modelling is and how you're doing this, which is why you need as many experts in as many different fields as possible. They have today asked for more experts to join the SAGE committee, not to actually be formal members, but to be advisory participants. I have to say that's a good thing. That means that we're going to get some experts advising the government on what to do. But I have to wonder why they didn't already have them. Who was advising them? What were the basis of the decisions being made if they'd had these massive gaps in knowledge on this board? And we won't really know the details of any of this until well past the time of all of this going on. So it's a bit of a concern, I find, that they're just going, oh yeah, actually now, yeah, could do with some experts. We're a month into this. We're over a month into this, guys. Like, and actually you had several weeks, well, from the start of January to be planning this and sort of coming up with your contingency plans. Why are you only asking for experts in the field now?
I think it was Michael Gove, wasn't it, said that the British public are sick of experts.
Yes.
And that's gonna, I think,
we're going to
history's
pause
going to
there,
judge
I
that to be
think.
the stupidest thing that anybody ever said. And cause that to stir a curry. Still, shall we move on to sort of a brighter...
Yes, I think, yeah, we can just mull that over. But I thought it was worth mentioning because it seems very much shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. But I will take anything we've got at the moment. So yeah, good stuff.
On a less worldwide scale, I have, the past few days, been experiencing some quite nagging headaches.
Oh.
Not severe, but just nagging and hard to kind of concentrate, a bit annoying.
Yes, you've mentioned a few times.
And I was trying to make sure I was having more liquids, and I thought it was just dehydration. But then yesterday, I was drinking plenty of fluids, and I was still headachy, and I thought, it's only I think I know what this is. I think this is caffeine withdrawal.
Ah.
Because since lockdown, I've been drinking a lot of Pepsi Max, having a lot of caffeine, but then we were sort of running out of that, and obviously we're not supposed to be going to the shops too often, and it's quite a heavy, bulky item to kind of carry back, so if you're going for other stuff, you don't necessarily want to grab too many cans of Pepsi, and I think maybe caffeine withdrawal was giving me these headaches, and obviously if I'm having that much caffeine, it's not a good thing to be getting those. So what I've decided is that from now on, I'm going to make sure I just have lots of caffeine all the time, so I don't get those headaches anymore. So
well, if you are in a pinch, at least we could make you a coffee.
Yes.
So if you can't get to the shops for the Pepsi, you can have a coffee.
Syrups?
We have got coffee syrups,
okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Coffee syrups, by the way, aren't syrups that are made of coffee. Chris doesn't have grown-up drinks. He doesn't like hot beverages, so we have to make things taste like chocolate mint.
Everyone's been to like a Starbucks. So they know what a coffee syrup is. Where you go have your hazelnut latte.
Well, we don't have they're not proper fancy ones that are meant for coffee though. They're not? Just they're like desserty syrups and things.
They're meant for putting in coffees.
The mint chocolate chip one.
Yeah, mint chocolate coffee, and then
it's very Sweet Freedom, which is a vegan brand that basically are like...
It's not dessert sauce.
They are dessert sauces.
Like
they are also for you... No.
I'm not putting like strawberry sauce like you'd use on your ice
mint
cream.
chocolate chip is not much better than strawberry sauce in coffee. It's fine. You can like not grown-up coffees.
I wish I had some strawberry sauce.
We've got agave nectar.
Yeah.
That's nice and sweet.
Yes.
I don't think how middle class was that? It's a good vegan alternative to sort of chocolatey sauces and stuff that I can use in cooking.
I've done my best career-wise to slide down the class scale to sort of working class impoverishment, but she's dragging me back up with her vegan ways. I'm going to be... You
can be a working class vegan.
But you have to talk about agave syrup and...
Well, I didn't say I'm a working class vegan, quinoa. But you can be. I don't like quinoa.
Me either.
But I do know how to pronounce it because it's not how it's spelt.
Also, the production of quinoa really affects the population of the people, the indigenous population of the country where it's produced and grown.
Where is it produced and grown?
Up the economy there. I don't know. I was trying to sound smart, and I don't have any of the relevant details. I sort of know the information, but I don't have the specific facts.
Oh, well, I heard the same thing.
So articulate then.
I didn't know. I was interested.
Made me look like a fucking idiot.
There needs to be some sort of, like, I don't know any more information.
Your mum watches this, I'm going to look like a fool.
How am I to know that you didn't know any more information?
You know me.
I'm just to assume you
Just
don't
if I
know
say
what you're
something
talking
that
about.
sounds vaguely smart, just go with it.
Okay.
And don't check anything because I'll fall apart instantly under questioning. You know
I'm
that.
sorry, I didn't know that was the rule.
You
are
you
slightly
should know
pushing
by
me
now.
out of shot here, by the way.
Oh, sorry. That wasn't in any sort of response to make me look stupid, will we? Well, now we'll see who gets all the focus. But yes.
Well, yeah, sorry, I didn't know that. I was just interested.
I'll talk about something I do have the facts on.
Yeah, what's that?
Because today, I've watched another bad wrestling documentary.
So they're all fresh in your mind.
Yes.
What was this one on?
This one was about.
I didn't have to watch it this time. I was up with Poppet doing some colouring in.
This one was about the Ultimate Warrior.
I've heard of the Ultimate Warrior,
yes.
but I don't know if it's just that I've heard of the Ultimate Warrior through you, or if it's genuinely in the public subconscious.
You know, the Ultimate Warrior was quite a big iconic figure in the late 80s, early 90s. Very flamboyant sort of character, but he had a big falling out with the WWE, and they released a DVD called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior that was about basically saying he wasn't really any good as a worker, like he was a very popular character, but he didn't have any longevity and couldn't really wrestle particularly well, and just went.
So it was just a hatchet job, we're just
real,
going to annihilate this dude.
A real hatchet job,
right?
But very entertaining.
Okay.
And then what happened is there was a lawsuit about that, and then they kind of buried the hatchet as a company, but not in his back this time.
Right. Okay.
And it's weird how hatchet is used in those two very opposing. But that's not the point right now. And they sort of buried the hatchet, and then he died, and so they made this documentary almost as a way to make amends and kind of redress the balance.
Right.
But the trouble is, first of all, it was much more bland and less entertaining than the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Okay. Second of all, it's.
So is this one that you were watching
today?
The second one, the like Memoriam one, or
I was watching. Yeah, I was watching the Memoriam one.
Right.
Like the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior is actually quite entertaining.
Right.
I'd recommend it.
Okay.
Out there somewhere.
Feels a little bit off now that I know that he's dead, though.
Sure, but this one, right?
Yeah.
The second problem with it is that they spent about a third of the documentary, talking about his in-ring career and like his successes, and then about a third of it talking about how things began to go wrong and how he ended up leaving the company and had a failed run in WCW.
Yeah. And
then the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, they talk about the DVD and the subsequent lawsuit. And then the final third of the documentary is sort of talking about him coming back into the fold and being inducted into the Hall of Fame and then him subsequently dying. But the thing is, if you're going to have an hour documentary about the Ultimate Warrior and actually how he was pretty good, to only have about a third of that time dedicated to his career, in-ring career and achievements, and kind of skirting through it quite briefly, almost
sounded
suggests
a bit more
that
like they were doing it to sort of go, we didn't actually do a bad job and we loved him really and don't remember us for the hatchet.
But it also
job.
suggests that 20 minutes kind of implies that there actually isn't all that much to talk about. Maybe he wasn't that great and his career wasn't that brilliant. Third problem with it is that he was actually like a homophobe and had some terrible political views. So maybe they were right to kind of just let the hatchet. They should just let the hatchet job lie and not kind of try and reappraise and reassemble this kind of iconic figure in their history, who nonetheless in real life had some pretty abhorrent views. So so I'm not doing it on purpose. I keep trying to go, well, this will be. I'll sit down and watch a good wrestling documentary, and that'll pass some of the lockdown time.
Are any of them good? Maybe this is the problem.
There's some real good ones. Oh, mate, you have opened up a can of worms.
I'm not willing to watch
You have let yourself
any of
in
them.
for a world of pain. Because I'm going to make you watch so many wrestling documentaries.
I'm going to do so much colouring in.
Oh, boy. You just wait until you see Beyond the Mat.
Beyond the Mat?
Beyond the Mat. And other documentaries.
Okay.
Shawn Michaels, the Triumph and the Heartbreak. Oh boy, it's going to be good. It's going to be a good time in the household. We're going to have lovely wrestling fun times.
40 days, and it's got us to this.
Tomorrow I'm going to try and watch a good wrestling documentary. Let's see.
Oh, is this every day going to just be your summaries
wrestling
of bad
update.
wrestling documentaries?
You take care of world events. I will do wrestling documentary news.
Okay.
It's what none of the other outlets are covering.
That's
You're
true.
not getting that on your BBC. You're not getting that on your Sky News. Take that, Kay Burley.
That's a name.
Yeah, take that, Kay Burley.
I don't think we're competing with Kay Burley, but it's
That's
nice.
right. We've left her in the dust.
Screw you, Kay.
Screw you, Kay Burley.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I don't know quite what to do with that, but actually, we're roughly coming into the half-hour mark anyway. So I think that we can probably
Go and eat a curry.
go and eat a curry.
We're
Yeah.
the best one in the world, guys.
Oh, it smells
got a curry
so
coming.
good. It smells really good, and I'm really hungry. I haven't really eaten properly today. I had some toast when I got up, and that's about it. And it's
Rogan
now
and Josh, guys.
gone 11. So
Love a Rogan Josh.
yeah, I'm all about this. Let's eat some curry.
Nice.
Nice. Toodles.
Right.